I don't want to take over the topics, but this is literally able to roll into the next topic that I was thinking of in the shower.
Okay.
And since we have multiple slots here, I'm going to go ahead and take it.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that keeps popping up on my radar recently is the value of people. And I mean that literally, like, as in,
Mm.
some people we value more, and it stands to reason that that happens, right? Like, I get that we might value the president of the United States more than we would value me in general, like, in a general thought process. But then I was like, that's um incident related, right?
Mhm.
So Joe Biden is the president of the United States. Outside of that, which is huge, right? I mean, that's a ton of responsibility,
Sure.
a ton of clout, a ton
Mhm.
of everything. Outside of that, is his value more than the value of any other
His
person?
title. Well, that's no. I mean, that's the thing is I think a lot of the time what we value is celebrity, how
Hmm.
famous people are, the amount of money that they make. All of that can go away in a heartbeat.
Yes, that is true.
That's what's crazy. I mean, we can value jobs and titles and all of these things, but and I think the people that are genuinely fucked is when those things go away and they themselves feel worthless. Not even
Right.
what other people think, but as a human being that they have allowed that to define who they are.
Right.
I think that's one reason you see even congressmen and women who don't retire until they're 80. Like it's not as much of course they probably don't want to continue working. I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm sure they love it and there's a certain level of, but I think a lot of it comes or stems from the amount of power or self perception of value for themselves to let that go. It's like, well, who is Nancy Pelosi without being Speaker of the House or a member of Congress representing San Francisco? That's
Right.
what you've been doing for 40 years, if not longer.
Yeah. So a lot of her identity is tied up in that. On the flip side, I have a confession. I don't know a lot about Nancy Pelosi, other than her political career. But you know what? She could be doing a lot of stuff that we don't know about.
Well, you know
And
what? It's like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and that doesn't matter. It's how she perceives herself, possibly. Like, we're not the ones that make the decisions. Like, I don't. I'm like, I'm. It drives me crazy. The T word doesn't get to derive my value. I don't give a shit what he says, right? I'm 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 what's the word? Not inconsistent. I'm ignorant to his thought process. That's not the word I'm thinking of, but I don't care. He doesn't he doesn't derive my value.
Oh,
But
he
then
only
again,
values,
I
he's one
don't
of those
derive his
people.
value,
No,
right?
not at all. He only values money and power. There's no question, right?
Right. But most
And power
most
most.
people do, don't they?
They do, which is insane. You know, I will say, like, I knew someone years ago, and he was so good at being able to talk to the janitor all the way up to a CEO. And he would always say, like, we all shit.
Yep.
He's like, I always remember that. He's like, I know it's crass, but I always keep that in my back pocket that the janitor, if he had gone to the right schools or been born to the right family, maybe the CEO, or the CEO, had he not been born to the right family or just not been given opportunity or whatever it may be, that he could be the janitor or
Right.
she.
Or look at Oprah, right? I do use her a lot as an example, because I have to admit, I did not get on the Oprah train until well after she was done with the Oprah Winfrey show. And actually, it's just been recently where I realized, wow, smart woman,
Mm-hmm.
kind of has her act together, and came from nothing. So
No.
when you want to harp on certain things, I do have to look to her. Now, mind you, she's not perfect, and I'm not saying she is,
No.
but I mean, she managed to take nothing and turn it into something, right? And her value dollar wise is larger than, I'm going to say, 98% of the population, if I'm not mistaken.
More, it's probably like 99%.
Right. So value wise,
99.9.
you want to put a dollar amount on it,
Yeah.
then and yet I could be wrong, but I do get the distinct impression her legacy will
Yeah.
live on long after, having nothing to do with her money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, gosh golly, if she can do it, right? I mean, let it, why can't we all just like maybe take a play from her playbook, is what I was thinking. Because, and it's a lot of it is, there's all these Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and they have a million followers, and I love it. Good for them. But that's actually how I started thinking about this whole loneliness thing, right? Originally was like, that's a lonely place to be, because where's the human contact with that? Where's the connection? And then those people are influential.
Mhm.
What are they influencing people to do? Dance?
And buy shit they don't need.
Buy shit they don't need. Yeah. Like Bitcoin. And then wham bam, thank you, ma'am. There it goes. So of course I have to admit I never did understand Bitcoin, which drove me crazy because I like to pretend I'm a smart person. And I'm like, yeah, I don't get it. Don't get it.
Blockchain, yeah.
Yeah, don't get it. But I was just worried. I think a lot. Again, I worry about people a lot, especially when I'm in the shower, because that's when my mind works. And I was just thinking, we value, like, the value of a person
Hmm.
is it's either you value human life or you don't, right? And I don't know, how do you only value certain human life? And yet that's a lot of what's happening. And even, sorry about that, even more importantly, it's interesting, my sister sent me something yesterday, and I said, why do you send me this shit? It's just going to make me mad. And it was a pastor in Vancouver, Washington,
Mm.
that was, he's like, am I mad that those people in Colorado got killed? No, I am not. Yeah. And I was just like, what? What? I mean, and it's because they're all pedophiles, because all gay people are pedophiles. I don't know if you were aware of this, but if you're going to be gay, apparently that means you have sex with children.
I hate those people. I do.
Yeah.
I hate them. Like, I don't.
Well, I said to my sister, you know what? Normally I'd get bent out of shape, but I'm now at a point in my life where what I can say is he will get his in the end. And that's that. So then the other thing I was like, so how many pastors do you know that have committed adultery? So what you're saying is, if then if then. If you're gay, then you're a pedophile. Then if you're a pastor, you're an adulterer. I mean,
Or a
why?
pedophile. Look
Why?
at what
Yeah,
happened
because look
with
at
the
the
Catholic
priests.
Purge.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, the thought process doesn't make sense.
Of
And it's
course it
because they don't
doesn't.
value the human. They don't
Well,
value the person.
this is like, I just had this conversation, and I know it's not exactly in terms of parallel, but I feel like it's very similar.
I love it.
I recently had a conversation with a group of people, and we were talking about Dave Chappelle
Yeah.
and the controversy around his Netflix special, as well as, his opening monologue on SNL a couple weeks ago. And it was just a little bit heated of a conversation. Heated's probably not the right word, but it was just like, we had differences of opinion.
Yeah.
And I was like, I love Dave Chappelle. I am kind of tired of his whole thing on the trans community, and I wish he would just let it go. But I also like, and I could be so wrong on this. Like, I'm not saying I'm right in this. It's just purely my opinion, and it fluctuates on top of it. So,
Yeah.
like, but at this point, I feel like he is a comic. He does not, if you are putting him on a pedestal to dictate how you feel about trans people, which he's never said anything bad about. If you
Yeah,
listen to him, he actually doesn't say anything bad.
I agree.
Um, where he's not saying like they're pedophiles or like nothing crazy like this pastor. I'm like, okay, so how is it when, South Park, for example, they can make fun of Jews, they can make fun of Christians and Catholics, but nope, can't make fun of Muslims. Like it's not, it's like who and what decides what's funny and what's not. I mean, and it's like, okay, you could take it a step further. Blackface. That used to be considered funny, but you know
Yeah.
what? Collectively, as a society, we rejected it and it was no longer okay. And it's like, to me, the fact that Dave Chappelle even brings up trans, it allows us to normalize it. We can all talk about it, have conversations, because everyone at the table was like, trans have the right, should have the rights that everybody else does. There need to be laws to protect trans people, whether it's in business and, like what, like people who hurt trans people should absolutely go to jail,
Yeah.
investigated, what, like we can all agree on that. But it was funny because my one friend was like, well, I think we should ask a trans person. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to ask a trans person because you know what? No one's ever fucking asked me how I felt when someone's making fun of a Black woman
Right.
or a white woman. I mean, I can cover both. No one gives a shit what we think. And my issue, and again, maybe this is my own, I'm sure people would call me transphobic in some way, and I'm absolutely not. Like, I absolutely believe in protection and equal rights, all of it. But I'm like, I can't help but wonder if he was attacking trans men, if we would be having this discussion, because trans men biologically are women. But because he seems to discuss, because his friend, who was what kind of the reason was he even did that whole spiel on the Netflix special, was a trans woman. Oh, trans women biologically grow up as men, and they're a lot of the time the loudest in the room, and they're the ones that don't want to get made fun of or like whatever the case is, because innately that's how they grew up, of having a certain privilege of like, we can make fun of everybody else, but not me.
Right.
And it's bullshit. It's like, now it's different if somebody is like, I don't care that somebody's dead or go out and kill someone. It's like, that motherfucker's not telling anybody to kill anyone, hurt anyone. And if he did, that would be absolutely fucking wrong.
Right. Agreed. Unlike the pastor, who he didn't tell, he said he deliberately did say, I'm not telling you to go out and kill anyone, but I'm okay that they're dead. And I was just like, okay.
Oh, that's disgusting. And
Oh
it's
my
just
God. It's worse.
disgusting.
It's worse than
And that's the thing
disgusting.
is it's like, if you don't want to believe in that, don't go to that church. If you don't like Dave Chappelle, don't go see his shows.
Right.
Like, at some point, those things, if collectively we can come together as a society and say that they're not acceptable, people will stop doing it.
Yeah. And that was has always been my thing about again, this is an area where you and I disagree, but it's that borderline regulating morality. Like, I don't want to regulate um oh my God, what's his name? Stern, Howard Stern, right?
Mhm.
I just want
No,
him to go away.
nobody even talks about him
That's
anymore.
why I want him to go away, because nobody gives a shit anymore, right? Like, he's no longer popular. We don't value him like we valued him earlier, and he
Mhm.
just went away. Although he still has an empire on Sirius XM or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
But I just am like, I don't want to. Actually, I've heard I think Dave Chappelle is brilliant. Actually,
I do
very
too.
very sharp man.
I
Like,
agree.
frighteningly smart in a good way. And so I think his take on LGBT is insightful, actually. I thought it was pretty insightful. And again, we have to learn to make light of ourselves in some ways, not in every way. Like, making a joke about someone's death is not funny.
No.
I just don't find it funny. But making a joke about who's in the driver's seat in a car full of LGBT people, that's kind of funny. Right? Who's in the driver's seat? Who's in the passenger seat? Who sits in the back? It was just a joke.
It's a joke.
And yeah. And, but now when people are standing in a court of law, right, and they're trying to promote a philosophy that limits, then it's not as funny.
What do you
Right?
mean in terms of what?
Well, like, when you're standing at a city council meeting and you're trying to pass a bill that says people can't use the bathroom, it's not as
Oh,
funny.
no, not at all. And that's what I mean. Like, he doesn't have any power,
Yeah.
right? Like, even he doesn't even have the same power as someone who has a church. Now, granted, he has a huge following. I'm not going to say that he doesn't. He clearly does.
Yes.
But I still think there is a difference in recognizing a comic versus a pastor of a church who is literally kind of regulating morality for that particular group of people
Yeah.
who they're leading.
Now, I would like to point out what I don't know is how many people got up out of that church and walked out. I'm going to bet there was one or two who did.
Maybe.
Because if I went to a church and heard that, I would literally get up and walk out.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't do it quietly because you know me. I don't do anything quietly. So I definitely would not do that quietly. But it's so disappointing to me. It's disappointing. And yet it's also enlightening how we value people differently and based on their differences. Now that's true of other people. So interesting enough, I noticed personally for me, you can say, "Oh, hey, I am," and you'll fill in the blank, and I will mentally make an assessment of you, right? Oh, I'm a Republican. I've made an assessment. It's a quick one. I voted for Trump. I had someone I really liked said that to me the other day, and it stopped me in my tracks, right? What? Well, what? Um, or I'm a Christian, and that I immediately start evaluating how we're going to interact. Like, I'm going to avoid you like nobody's business. And I noticed that I want to not equate that to their value. Like, I still like to step away and say, okay, I may not get along with you. I don't see eye to eye with you. I would never vote the way you voted, but you still have value.
Well, there's inherent value, right? Isn't there that a saying that everyone has inherent value and worth?
Yeah.
And they do, but I mean, that's where maybe I disagree. And maybe value is not the right word, but that's how I feel. If somebody tells me they voted for Trump, I have devalued them in my mind. There's absolutely no way that I'm not, because clearly someone who votes for Trump doesn't give a fuck about women, doesn't give a shit about somebody lying or truth or decency, none of it. So you know what? No, I really have they are devalued in my mind. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. I'm sure if they saw someone struggling to stand up, they'd go help them, hopefully, or like you hope, whatever. Like, I would hope that they would do good things in life. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they're like the worst person, but they've definitely lost value.
To you.
Yes, for
Yeah.
me, in my opinion, you have gone down a couple of notches. Like, I am probably not going to go out of my way to talk to you much. I am probably not going to go, and that's not fair. I'm not saying how I feel is like,
Yeah.
but I feel so strongly about what Trump represents and the people that support him. And as a woman of color, no, then I
And I
already
get
know,
it.
because in my mind, that means they don't even value me as a human being.
I hear you. But what to me, and maybe this is a fine line. Again, this is splitting a hair, I'm going to say, in all fairness. But to me, there's a difference between someone who said, I voted for Trump this last time, and Trump is God's chosen representative. Like, to me, there are two different things. Like, some people just voted for Trump because he was the Republican candidate and they don't know any better. Now, I know you are out there in a different place, but for me, this is how I look at it. And then there are people that believe in Trump, and those are the people that I
Yeah, you're
pick
way
for.
nicer than me. Fuck every single one of them. I don't have any empathy. I mean, I tried the other day when I was in Phoenix, actually, a couple weeks ago. A truck pulled up, someone that was, I was paying to help with some stuff. And I saw a Trump sticker on the side of his truck. And I thought,
Yeah.
I am just going to talk to him. Like, clearly nothing political. And I wouldn't necessarily have a political conversation with someone in that type of situation or setting, anyways. It was a transaction. But somehow we started talking just about life. And the one thing, I tapped into a friend of mine who was always like, look, when you talk to people, and I agree with this. It's like you talk to people about policy, like, for example, healthcare. If you're like, look, healthcare should be more affordable, if not free, majority of people are like, yeah, don't attach Republican, don't attach Democrat to it. Yeah,
Right.
we need more affordable housing. Majority of people are going to be like, yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, homelessness is partly, an issue because people can't, even if you're working two jobs in some cities, can't afford to pay your rent.
Mm-hmm.
And, even families or whatever. And so somehow we started talking about those issues and how people should not be going bankrupt because they get sick. And he kind of said, I have a full-time job and this is what I do on the side. And our costs just keep going up. And it was kind of like nobody's helping us. Like, he
So he
felt
didn't
like,
blame Biden.
no, not necessarily. When we didn't talk names, he never mentioned Trump. I didn't mention Biden. There was no names of, and he just literally said, I just don't feel like the system works for me or our family. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as we get ahead, something comes up, like we can just never get ahead. And I was like, I have empathy for that. I do understand it. But I also, I guess where I lack empathy, and it's maybe a personal flaw that I need to work through, I may be struggling. I'm still never going to vote for somebody who thinks that there are fine people on both sides when there are
Yeah.
neo-Nazis marching. Jews will not replace us. Sorry, I'm not going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
people who can say, oh, well, that wasn't a big deal, or kind of blow it off or shrug it off. Fuck off. Fuck off.
I get
I'd
it.
rather pay an extra dollar for my banana. And yeah, it may suck. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Right.
And I'm definitely coming from a different place. I don't have a family. I'm not, in that position. But I still think I'd be like, yeah, I'm.
Yeah. Well, you and I are never going to vote for the T word. I mean, it's just not ever going to happen.
No.
There's never an instance.
But the difference is you have empathy for those who have, and I just don't. Like,
but
I've
again,
lost
I'm not walked the same mile in your shoes that you walked, right? So
I mean, I've lost more friends because of Trump. And it's so funny. I was having brunch yesterday, and a friend of a friend was there. And she said this was the first Thanksgiving that she has not, her and her husband, who are liberal, live in Delaware, I believe, or Pennsylvania. It's the first Thanksgiving that they were not invited to either side of their family's Thanksgiving parties. And she's like, or dinners. And she's like, I know. She's like, in my gut, core, heart, whatever, I know we were not invited because of politics. And she's like,
wow.
and I blame Trump because he is why. Like, we've always had differences of opinions. She's like,
Yeah.
it's not like that hasn't existed prior, but it's just so decisive now
Yeah.
that they cannot be in the same room.
Yeah. The T word is a divisive person. Period.
Totally. 100%. 100%.
But somehow, other than this one fight I got into with a guy in a bar, which is typical, but the friends in my life, we've managed to navigate it somehow. And mostly it's because I'm like, look, I'm telling you right now, we're not going to discuss this in my house. If we're in your house, we can discuss it. But in my house, it doesn't come up.
Boundaries, baby. You got to have some boundaries.
Now, if you want to hear the extended version of this show or some of our outtakes, go to our Patreon page, which will be listed below. And don't forget to subscribe.